But I just wanted to put that out there for all of you, just in case you want to keep your student's name out and you don't want to mention them. But further ado, I'm going to hand it off to my partner, Michelle, let her introduce herself, and then we're going to introduce our wonderful campus partner. So again, my name is Megan. I am one of the student orientation coordinators for the orientation office, and I'm going to hand it off to my partner, Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm one of the other student orientation coordinators, and I'm going to be here. I'm going to be mainly monitoring the chat and making sure everyone's muted if there's any background noise or anything.
Thank you, Michelle, and I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Beekler. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at Bridgewater State University. And today's session is to kind of really just answer some general questions that you might have. And then if you need additional assistance, we'll be able to make sure you get in touch with the right counselor. And I know there's oftentimes many questions that get very personal, so this will be generic. And then from there, we can connect you with the right counselor that could go into your some of your questions that you might have.
Thank you, Laura. Another ground rule I'm going to put down is that I know what everyone's top of their head is, what's the university going to do? What's the fall going to look like? I know those are questions that we all want answered. There should be a statement sometime coming out this week regarding what that's going to look like. But again, the purpose of this session, as Laura mentioned, is to answer questions related to financial aid or anything that you want answered, and Laura here can answer that for you. So I'm going to get started and ask Laura our first question. Again, please feel free at any time to put a question in the chat feature or unmute yourself and let me know that you have a question specifically. So my first question is, Laura, how can my student access their financial aid package?
So for any incoming student to Bridgewater State University, we use a system that basically allows access 24/7 for a student to gain financial information along with their student account information, other areas, and it's called InfoBear. When you were accepted to Bridgewater State University, the Office of Admissions actually reached out to you and with a digital letter along with a paper copy of your acceptance to the university. For financial aid, we initiated for anyone who has ability to be awarded financial aid, we've sent out emails first, and then we did do a round of paper letters to students about 30 days ago, just to remind you that you do have financial aid and maybe you have some outstanding items. So InfoBear is where the student would actually access their financial aid award letter.
Awesome, thank you very much. So to go along with that, who can I talk to about my financial aid packages? I know you kind of briefly mentioned that there's some counselors. Can you get into that, please?
Absolutely. So in our office, what we have is we have front support staff that is generally your first of contact. So if you call the main number and you go onto our website, bridgew.edu, and then you would also go under financial aid. The financial aid tab has a list there that indicates what we do in our office along with alpha splits, which is basically the last name of the student who's assigned to a specific counselor. Now, you can call in, and what's happening right now due to COVID-19 is we actually have all of our staff telecommuting. What that means is if you were to call our extension 1341, you're going to get a voicemail that explains to you to please leave your information, and then our staff will reach out to you within 24 hours and try to connect with you. Oftentimes people refer to saying, oh, I'd rather have an email. That's actually very quick as well. We do have an email address that's generic. It's finaid@bridgew.edu, or you can get your actual financial aid counselor that's assigned to you based on the last name of the student. So for example, if your last name is Adams, you're going to look for the counselor that has A through C, for example, and that would be who you would contact, and you can directly reach out to them by email. They all do have extensions. However, during the COVID-19 period, we're funneling everything to 1341. So whichever way you choose, I can guarantee you a financial aid counselor or front support staff will be in touch with you to make that connection and answer your questions.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to open it up to our chat now. Does anyone have a specific question that they would like to ask? They have been great. They have. Yes, they have. Would anyone like to unmute themselves and ask Laura any specific questions, or again, put a question in the chat?
All right, so InfoBear is actually the school's portal. What that is so anytime you go to a college, they generally have an area where students can access all their information in one secured area. So InfoBear here is our secured student portal. A student can actually access their InfoBear by going to bridgew.edu, and on the right-hand side, there's a login. And you can also call the admissions office or the financial aid office if you're having trouble and your student is saying they still don't know what you're talking about. Refer back to the admissions letter that you received along with emails, because that can be helpful just to kind of guide you where you're going. But InfoBear is our student portal. Students get very used to utilizing it once they're here, because once they matriculate into the school and begin attending Bridgewater, that's how all communication actually takes place. So it's very important that as you go through the summer and progress, that the student does enter into the InfoBear and start realizing that they need to use it. Because for financial aid, I can tell you that's how we communicate with students. We generally do not send too much paper anymore, and you can understand the why, the reason for that. Most things are digital these days and students are just clicking, and so are parents, and getting the documents to us. So if you have any trouble accessing the school portal, which we refer to as InfoBear, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to guide you.
So we have a couple questions. Can you talk about work study programs, Laura?
Sure, absolutely. There will be some additional information coming out. Due to this year with the COVID-19, we are experiencing some challenges and some delays, as you can imagine, like many other entities are around us. And so what we can say is that there'll be additional information coming out about student employment. If you see it on the award offer that your student has received in their package, it means that they're eligible for federal work study. Now, the campus also has a large student employment area where you can also get non-work study positions. Work study jobs are basically, you've been awarded a certain amount of dollars in your financial aid award. So say you see $1,800 and it's $900 per semester. The student doesn't have to feel the pressure to get a job right away. What we'd like the student to do is say, okay, look, I know it's an opportunity, but maybe in October, after you get into the swing of things, you're going to want to look for a position. The most important thing is keep in mind is there's opportunities for students to work. Usually they begin at minimum wage, and sometimes they can be a bit higher depending on the experience and the level of the job. We do have jobs all over campus, and one of the biggest things I like to encourage freshmen coming in is just to take a deep breath, get settled in your classes, and then begin the application process. Student employment actually does have a process in which a student has to go through to get hired. So it's not that we just hand you a job. You actually have to do the interview process. You have to submit a resume and cover letter. And if that seems overwhelming, like it can to many students, that's what student employment is there for. You would be able to reach out to their office and they'll walk you step by step through the process, because it's not to be scary or intimidating. It's just that there is trying to teach the student how to begin working and interviewing. These are skills that we try to teach while the student's here. So there is more to come on federal work study. There's also more to come on student employment and what the options will be and the jobs in the offices that will be hiring. But I can say there's a very robust program here on campus that is gives great opportunity in many different areas to students.
Thank you. So we have a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to direct them your way, Laura. So the next question we had is, what is the process for applying grants or towards tuition?
So when we talk about financial aid here, what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, just to be transparent. So you've been awarded financial aid. That is a package that applies to the fall into the spring. So you get charged on a semester basis here. So when you have a bill that's going to be generated to you, that bill is going to be for the fall semester only, okay? Then you would look at your financial aid, and it's going to usually be what they call anticipated at the bottom of that bill. It's going to be the half of the financial aid that you've been awarded, so in the fall column. And so you'll see your charges and then your financial aid. Grants, of course, are free money. Stafford loans, any type of word that has the word loan in it is going to be repaid. Some are going to be in the student's name. So a Stafford loan, for example, is in the student's name. If you choose not to have loans, or you look at your bill and you say, you know what, we don't really need to utilize those this year, that is fine. You would want to contact the financial aid office though, because you do have to decline those. We assume everything is accepted if we don't hear from you. So that's oftentimes when we start to hear the little bit of, pick up in call volume, because you'll get the bill and then you'll say to yourself, okay, well, I don't need this, or I actually need more of something, meaning that you might need to figure out how to close the gap. And that gap that we're talking about is if your charges are $12,000 and your financial aid is only $6,000 for that semester, you would have a $6,000 gap. So you need to work with the student accounts office if you're interested in payment plans. You would have to work with my office if you're interested in taking out additional loans and understanding federal versus private loans better. Those are the services that your counselor will walk you through step by step to assist you in making sure that your bill and your anticipated aid are all in place before attending in September. So we actually are quite busy throughout the summer semester helping parents with this. Keep in mind that we don't just assist the incoming class, right? We also assist all BSU students. So we do ask for your patience, even though we do try our best to make sure we can get back to you as soon as possible. Our total population is about 9,000 students to 10,000 students. So we are working around the clock to make sure that we can get everything in place for you before you attend in the September. So don't worry, we will be in touch. But the concept of what applies first, we don't really have an order. It basically, everything applies to the student's account. If you don't want the loans, you have to let our office know. If you're declining something like federal work study because you decide you're not interested, you have to let us know. We assume you want everything unless you indicate to us otherwise.
Thank you. So I see some questions. One of them is, are unsubsidized loans used before subsidized? And when is it best to start applying for private loans, before or after receiving my bill?
Sure. So just like I just explained about Stafford loans, subsidized is always first because it's subsidized by the government, it has no interest. The ultimate last loan is the unsubsidized loan. And then after that actually is the private / Parent Plus loans, whatever kind of other loan you decide to get. So when we talk about how things apply to the bill, it always first goes your financial aid. And then if you have excess, you'll see a negative at the bottom of your bill. That negative is indicating to you that's what we call a student refund that they would receive in October, which means that your charges and your anticipated aid, what will happen is your anticipated aid exceeds your charges, meaning that your student would get a refund. That refund wouldn't come until mid-October. Now, students do utilize this excess funding for things such as books and supplies, transportation. Sometimes there's just different things like laptops, things that are unexpected as a student goes into their first year. So what we encourage people to know is that if you decide just to leave the excess funding there, it's okay. You don't have to tell us now in July. You can wait till, September, October, even into November, because even if the refund comes to you, you have the ability to let the office know, I don't want it, and we can then return it. So it's nothing to be worried about when you do see it on your bill. If you see a negative minus sign and then a number, that means that your financial aid exceeds your charges at that moment. Now keep in mind that your bill can change. So in the state of Massachusetts, you're going to see a charge of it's health insurance on your bill. You're going to be told you have to waive that off. Okay, so when you waive off your health insurance, your bill's going to go down. Well, then you decide, oh, well, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to change a class and it has an additional fee. So your classes and your charges are actually not finalized until we actually get you here and enrolled and matriculated into classes. So as we go through the summer, don't get too caught up in the concerned part if you see an overage of financial aid on your bill to charges, because your bill might not be finalized yet. So this is why the financial aid counselor works closely with each parent and student as long as you reach out to us. Now, we don't go to you in the sense that we don't reach out to you unless we hear from you. So we actually need you to reach out to your financial aid counselor or just to the 13401 number, and then we will make sure you're aware of who your contact is, so when you have questions, we can answer it quickly, efficiently, and make sure you're ready for September.
Laura, could you talk a little bit about the payment plan options that you may have in place?
So payment plan is handled in student accounts, and we're happy to answer a lot of the generic questions. What will happen is when your bill is issued is actually when the payment plan becomes available. The goal is mid-July for the fall bills, okay? So I'm not going to give you a specific date. I'm just going to tell you mid-July at this point. It'll be generated electronically. You do not get a paper bill, okay? So the student will receive an electronic bill. As you go through the orientation process, we will start showing you different things of how you can access the bill. If you have questions on how to do so, I encourage you to reach out to student accounts. But at this point in time, we have not issued anything, nor have we even charged yet. So we're still in the preparation process. In mid-July, you'll receive information about what your total is due. You can look over your anticipated financial aid if you have any. And then as well, you can say, okay, now I'm kind of confused and I want to call the financial aid office, or I want to call student accounts office, and we'll help you better understand the payment plan option. In general, each payment plan per semester is 5 payments. There is an enrollment fee, and it's directly debited from whatever account you attach it to. Student accounts also takes credit card payments, checks, cash, as well as the payment plan that you can set up. If you think that you are interested in the payment plan, what it suggests to you is getting enrolled as soon as possible, because what will happen is if you don't enroll in July and then you enroll in September, you would actually be paying 3 months of payments at once to be able to get enrolled, because there is a process of it coming out every month. So you can't really push it back. So the concept would be that you would owe 3 months of payments all at once in September if you decide to postpone it. So that's why we encourage you to if you have questions about that, to contact student accounts, because they'll go over the details with you a little bit more on what it entails to be in the payment plan.
Thank you. Neil, I see that you have a question, so by all means, you can unmute yourself and ask one. So you're using a desktop, that's fine. If you would like to just chat your question in the chat section, I can just verbalize it and then we can ask Laura. As we wait for Neil's question, does anyone have a question, anything else that they would like to ask?
I did notice there was a question about the health insurance waiver. When will it be available? The waiver will also become available when your bill is generated. So mid-July, you'll start to see it, you'll start to hear about it, probably more so in August. You'll hear and get more information about, go to this link and waive it. Please be patient with student accounts, as they as well get flooded with a lot of calls and inundated as soon as bills are released for the entire institution. But there's plenty of time to waive it. You probably will do it more so towards August, okay?
So it looks like we have a question about needing a password to log into like financial aid. So Laura, could you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So for anyone that's an incoming student, you received a PIN in your first letter of acceptance. So when you go in, you're going to basically have to set up and follow the directions to how to access your InfoBear. If you're having trouble or you don't know your PIN, we are going to actually ask you to reach out to the admissions office. This is only the initial steps. Once you're actually here on campus, you're assigned, you'll actually sign up with a password, and then you'll just know what your password is. So it's usually your banner, what we call a student ID, or oftentimes referred to as a banner ID, and then a PIN number. So your student ID number is on the top, usually on the right-hand side of your letters, especially in financial aid, but also in admissions, and then you have a PIN number. That PIN number was generated to you when you got your first acceptance to the school. So if you want to go to that link and log in, you can. If you're completely confused, I understand. Just make sure you reach out to the admissions office or my office by email or by phone, and we'll get back to you and we'll be able to assist you with the login piece.
Awesome, thank you. Michelle, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I'd like to add about this password thing. What might be happening is that parents actually don't immediately have access to their students' financial aid records. Once they're in college and your student is an adult, they actually are the only person who has access granted at first for their financial aid, all of their grades, everything like that. So in order to get into your student's e-bill or get into your student's financial aid stuff, your student is going to have to either give you their password or grant you access. So family members do not get access to their accounts. That's your student's account, and you can talk to your student about whether or not you think it's appropriate that you have access to their account. Personally, my parents don't have access to my account. I just send them screenshots of what my bill looks like. But it's because of actual federal laws, kind of like HIPAA. There are things in place that protect your student because they are an adult now. So it's up to you to negotiate with your student whether or not you find it appropriate, if you're paying for their bill, that you have access to their bill. You don't immediately have access to their bill, and you do not have access to their info bearer. Your student has to go in and do that themselves.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm actually going to have Michelle chat in the chat feature and drop down the financial aid counselors, as Laura had mentioned before. So if you want to take a picture of it or write it down while we're talking about it and you have further questions, like private questions, you're more than welcome to use that. Yes, Neil, please by all means type your question. And again, anyone, please feel free to ask a question at any time. So the question is, I want to take loans in my student's name. What one should I apply for and when?
So the Stafford loans are automatically in the student's name. So those are the federal loans. And the reason they're considered financial aid is because there's no credit check required. One of the things you'll get into very quickly is a student doesn't have usually throughout their college career, if they're a traditional student entering when they're 17 or 18, they will not have access to lending without a cosigner. And so what this is basically you're going to could be a parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be a guardian, anyone who's interested in assisting, but the student themselves will always get the staffers as long as they complete the FAFSA online. That's why they're considered financial aid. From the aspect of private loans, a private loan and the eligibility to get one, there's two basic factors. A student would have to be usually has to be a U.S. citizen. The cosigner has to be a U.S. citizen. So that's two very important things. The options we don't have a suggested lender list. We have very popular ones that students tend to use. And if you go online, you'll see under private loans, it's called Elm Select. You go onto Elm Select, you type in Bridgewater State University, and it's kind of like a portal that also lists all of the most popular student loans that are around for us here in the southeast part of Massachusetts. You'll notice big names like Wells Fargo, Citizens Bank, but then you'll also notice some smaller DCU credit unions. This is when I like to take a moment and just let the parents know that oftentimes some of the best loans that a student can get in this private option is if you actually have a credit union at your job. So oftentimes I'll have parents say, well, I didn't like the interest rate that I got from, say, Citizens Bank. And then I always want to remind them, you should go apply or talk to your HR office to see if there's a credit union that does student loans. Now, the difference between a student loan that's private versus a Parent Plus loan. So the Parent Plus loan has the fixed interest rate, and it's always in the parent's name, which means that the student will never be on the hook for that money. They can tell you all they want that they're going to pay it back. We know that there's a reality that sometimes that doesn't happen, and the parent is saddled with the debt. If you have a student who's really looking to get, or you choose that the student is going to be borrowing private loans, what that means is that someone is going to have to co-sign. This is not just for 1 year. A student's credit does not build their credit history enough for them to really ever be able to get and secure a private loan unless they were going to be in their late 20s and early 30s and had been working for a couple of years. So ultimately, the decision to begin borrowing privately to afford college, you want to pick a place where you can kind of be guaranteed they're going to be in business. And this is why the credit unions can be a great resource. Plus, they have very low interest rates. Now, if you do decide to select a private lender, I do suggest the shopping period. The shopping period is about a week period in which you could apply to 3 different applications, 3 different banks to see what type of percentage of interest you receive. Those results, if you do it within the same week, will only pull the cosigner's credit once. That's a great thing because you don't want to continually be pulling your credit. Now, you have plenty of time to do this throughout the year. You also want to realize that you probably want to have the finances completed and ready to go for the year in September. So you don't have to rush out right now. You probably want to wait till your bill generates to see kind of what you need for fall, and then second that again and add that on for spring. When you do a private loan and you are co-signing, you're going to want to make sure that you kind of have a good idea of what amounts needed, but at the same time, what that interest rate looks like. We do not see your interest rate. So we do not know the terms and conditions that you have decided to agree to with the bank. I can say that in general, it's economy driven, meaning that when we had the Great Recession, I saw a lot of people who had borrowed privately through the good years of our economy go to their private lenders for their 4th year, being a senior, all excited, the parents excited to go grab that loan, and this will be the last year they have to borrow, and they got denied. Because the economy is very dependent on how the entire nation is doing financially, the banks in private loans can come and go. So keep in mind that if you have a Citizens Bank loan now with a low interest rate, that low interest rate is a reflection of the credit as well as the status of the economy. I cannot guarantee, and that's why we call those private loans. We do not know if they will be around. The worst that I've ever seen has been through the recession, and many of the companies that we still have posted are companies who made it through those tough times. So I think that you can trust that list, but if you call us and say, which one should I take, we actually cannot assist you with that. Keep in mind that even private lenders offer what they call parent loans. Again, if the word parent is in the loan, you're going to be the person who's the parent is going to be the one in charge to pay it back. The student never will. So you're going to want to keep that in mind depending on what type of flavor you're going to pick for a loan. If you decide to do a parent loan and then there's an agreement between you and the student, I see that all the time, and I think it works out well, probably 85–90% of the time. But if the student does say, you know, what is my responsibility to that, and they come in our office and ask us that question, we're going to tell them it's a parent loan, so it's not really your responsibility. So you do want to keep that in mind, that if you're communicating with the student, you might want to just make sure that they realize what type of loan they're signing for, as many times students don't understand debt when they're getting into it. I mean, they can say they understand it, but we all know that it takes time to really understand each year when you're borrowing what that real dollar amount's going to be when you pay it back.
Thank you. So I know we've seen a couple questions, and I know you said this is more so for student accounts, so I don't know if you can talk about it a little bit. But for payment plans, if a parent is divorced or separated, can there be 2 separate payments that are allowed to come in?
Yes, there is. So we do have that quite often. It doesn't surprise us. What I will say is sometimes parents that do that and they're not communicating the very best, that can be challenging. We'll try our hardest to communicate with the right parent, but it does make it difficult when the one parent calls in trying to figure out the other person's. Because of FERPA, we're not going to ever give you access to the other parent's information. So if they fall behind or something, what'll happen is the student will be notified that it's delinquent. So you would see, if you had access to the e-bill, you would see the late fees start to accrue. And then when you would call in, we'd kind of let you know if it was, of course, your account or if it was somebody else's account. So that would be important to keep in mind, but we absolutely have more than one payer on a payment plan.
Thank you. Another question is, what is the deadline to complete the entrance counseling on the FAFSA?
So entrance counseling is actually related to the Stafford loans that were generated. There's 2 items needed, and then it continues. The MPN is a master promissory note, and then the entrance counseling. Those 2 items, if you're going to accept the Stafford loans, or if you're going to just accept the subsidized or unsubsidized, this part is required. The counseling shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes. It should be completed before the student starts school, because once they get here, we don't, we'll notify the student every week that we need something from them, but I would say that there's competing priorities when a student comes to school. They want to be, in doing their studies and working with, with the faculty. And I always try to reserve getting involved. So I always like to say, we're here if you need us. But if you could do the financial aid part before the student gets here in September, that would be great. So if you could do the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, they're both electronic. You can't fail the entrance counseling. That's about 20 minutes. It's just a light read that goes over what debt is, what it means to pay it back, what interest means on a loan. And then the master promissory note is just a signature with a couple references. Both should be easy to complete. And if you're curious, if you did complete it and it was received, it does take a couple days to load, okay? So one of the things you'll want to keep in mind is that if you did it, say, tomorrow, you might want to check in with our office the following week. Or you can have the student log into InfoBear and be able to then access, and it'll say received on there instead of incomplete. So if you have any questions around that, I know it's a new process, just give us a quick call or send us an email and we'll let you know if we've received it and then it's linked properly.
Thank you. So I know I keep seeing questions of how do I request more assistance from financial aid. Michelle, like I mentioned, did drop the names of the financial aid counselors at Bridgewater. So then that would be a really good spot to reach out to your student's financial aid counselor and get more personalized assistance. Do we have any more questions? Again, please feel free to unmute yourself or put a question in the chat section. Laura, could you talk about how financial aid packages are determined by students?
Sure. So basically, when you complete the FAFSA, that's the only form that we require to determine financial aid. So if you didn't complete the FAFSA, then you don't have a financial aid package. You could have a scholarship, but you don't have a package, what we refer to as packages. For how it's determined, it's based on EFC level, estimated family contribution. So when you've completed the FAFSA, you got a result at the end. This result is based on information that you inputted on the application. Now, we acknowledge that the data that's used by the government to determine the access you have to savings / investments and ability to borrow is a little dated. It's 2-year data, right? It's 2018. We know that we've been going through a lot just in the past few months with COVID. So one of the things to keep in mind is if you've had a dramatic change, such as a divorce, a death, loss of income, what I would encourage you to do is keep in mind that we would look at an appeal. So you'd want to reach out to your financial aid counselor. Now, what we try to do to not burden the parent is we first try to listen to what the changes are. If it's something like a divorce, that we understand. We're probably going to ask you for your 2019 data, even your 2020 tax data, if that's when it took place. If there's a separation, there's a couple more things involved. If there's a death, there's a couple items we ask for. If there is a one-time rollover from a 401k because you changed a job, reach out to your financial aid counselor. We'll tell you what we need for those types of things, because sometimes your snapshot of 2018 is not accurate to what your current day situation is. Now, I do caution, and I've done a couple other recordings for incoming families. For the sake of coronavirus and what everyone has been through with COVID-19 and loss of employment and waiting in line for unemployment, with the CARES Act and the supplemental income that has been substituted and added on to unemployment, We are not going to just immediately adjust your numbers, because when we do an appeal, what we look at to change what we call the estimated family contribution is we have to have the burden of proof that the income estimated for the future year, being 2021, is significantly lower, not just off of a 3-month period. So we have to be able to estimate, and then you'd have to say that you are not returning to work, and so many different pieces and elements are required to change an estimated family contribution. So the way the financial aid office has been instructed by the Department of Ed to work with families is, we first want to hear what your hardship is, and then we will let you know if it's better just to submit an appeal for additional funding, or if we should recalculate your estimated family contribution. We do not want to burden the parent or the student with excess paperwork that I'm required to get to do one thing if you just need additional money to attend. There are different resources available. Again, you have to come to us so we can help you. We don't know if you're struggling. You have to identify yourself with the financial aid counselor, and then we will be able to work with you to see what your questions are, what your concerns are, and how we can help you as an institution financially, okay? So that's how financial aid packages are determined. And then if you feel like your results of your FAFSA weren't accurate, the next steps. So those are kind of what we're asking parents to really keep in mind as we're going through this difficult summer, okay?
Thank you. That's a really good point to make up. So thank you. I appreciate that. Does financial aid, not financial aid, does FAFSA take in consideration if you have more than one child attending college in the fall?
Yes, so FAFSA basically, just so you know, some of you might have multiple going to college at the same time. So the FAFSA, when you just have one in college, it asks you how many are in your household, how many are in college. If you just have one, your estimated family contribution results are going to just be considering one student and what you could possibly afford or could borrow to assist with your contribution. If you have two in college, it takes that number and divides it by 2. So say your estimated family contribution was $5,000, and now you have 2 in college. Your estimated family contribution is going to be $2,500 instead, okay? Then you move to the third. You would think that you would go down into thirds, and the number would keep getting smaller. No, the government stops there. So if you have a family of 4 and 3 are in college, not the parent, but 3 students, a single parent with 3 students in college, the EFC will only split into half one time, okay? So that's where sometimes it can also get confusing, because you could think that you have so many in college that there would be a distribution change in your EFC, and there's not.
Does that also apply if a parent is in college?
So one thing to keep in mind is that when a parent's in college, it's considered a choice. And we know that's upsetting, especially when you might have lost your job and it was not your choice. You had to go back to school to get credentials. For the dependent student, the parent going to college does not count towards the number in college. And if we saw that it did, we would actually remove it and correct it based on federal rules. If you, the parent, are going to college and your son and daughter are in college, when you complete the FAFSA as an adult, it does count that you're in college because you're applying for financial aid for yourself, okay? But for you as a parent in college and then you're applying for, say, your son, you will not be counted as one in college. Your son is the one counted as in college only.
Laura, I know you touched on it briefly, and I know there's no deadline yet about when bills are going to be coming out, but typically in past years, when do they typically get sent out? End of July, beginning of August?
So usually we try our best to get it out as quickly as possible to families. And so the 15th is actually around where we always aim, and that's what we'll try for again. Upperclassmen and new students should be receiving their award offers. If you did not receive your award offer yet, don't panic. There are some significant decisions being made in the sense of campus life and different things as we proceed through these uncharted times. So you should be receiving an award offer soon, as long as we see that your documents are in and everything's complete. So not everyone has been awarded. It's an ongoing process that actually goes on continuously. If you have a question though about is your award coming, I would basically say if you don't owe us anything and you see that your FAFSA was considered complete, yeah, you're good to go. Everything's fine. If in fact you are not in that position, then and you have you're kind of curious what's happening, give us a call real quick or email us and we'll let you know.
Thank you. So we have another question that says, I have two going to college and their financial aid packages are totally different. Is this due to the cost of attendance for each school, and is this typically normal?
So keep in mind that each school is different because certain things are standard, such as a Stafford loan for a freshman. It's $3,500. That's standard, that's federal. Pell Grant ranges based on an EFC. Usually if you fill out the FAFSA and it's the same information on both sides, your EFC is going to be the same, except if the student worked on one end and not the other. Sometimes that'll change it a little bit. So one of the things to keep in mind is if you're looking at, say, a school like, I don't know, UMass Amherst, and then you're looking at Bridgewater State, they're both going to two different schools, both the students. Their financial aid awards are not going to mirror each other. Every school has the ability to package in their own paradigms and in their own way. So comparing awards often happens around this time, where you went to, say, a private school and you got a merit for $40,000 and the cost of attendance there is $70,000. And then you came to Bridgewater and you don't see a merit on there because we don't have them. And then you say, well, it costs $30,000 to come here. But I got need-based money that's different. It's not merit-based. So those are the differences in funding. And you're going to want to really think about the concept of what the cost of the school is to what the discount is. A lot of schools use merit as a discount tool, like a coupon. So a $40,000 merit can make you feel really great, but if the school still costs $80,000, you're still out of the pocket, usually $40,000. So those are where things can change with award offers, okay? So keep that in mind. If you have questions and you want us to look at somebody else's award, on occasion we can look at it to see what is different if it's the same student. So for example, a student applies to Framingham State and applied here. One letter has Pell Grant on it and the other letter doesn't, and it's for the same student. You probably want to try to figure out what's different. You can reach out to us, okay? And we'll try to see if we can help you, okay?
Awesome. So I know this isn't a question that was shared in the chat, but as an individual that was an incoming freshman, I was confused about the differences between loans and grants. Can you just give the basic difference between them, Laura?
Yes. So the difference between grants and loans, grants are free money, okay? Scholarships and grants are generally free money. Scholarships will oftentimes have something tied to it like a GPA. Grants is based on your EFC. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you are knowing that on an award letter, like here at BSU, we're very transparent. That's at the top. We're going to tell you it's grants and scholarships. At the bottom for loans, we're always going to use the word loans, Stafford loans. Now, other award offers, I can say can be confusing because they don't separate it out and they do not indicate the word loan sometimes. You'll just see the word Stafford direct. If you have questions about if you're looking at multiple schools and you haven't made up your mind yet, if you're confused on what is a loan and what is not, then you want to go ahead and move forward with saying, okay, let me give that financial aid counselor a call just to really make sure it's transparent. Here at Bridgewater, we even have an Excel document that's really easy to use. And if you call your financial aid counselor or email them, we actually send it to you in an email and you can plug in the numbers and really look at your charges versus your loans versus your grants. And it's very transparent and easy. And you're welcome to use that at other institutions if you're looking at, say, 3 different schools right now, still trying to make it, figure it out. But loans in general will not be paid back until the student is either withdrawn from the school and stops attending or they graduate. then student loans go into repayment. So you don't have to be too concerned about what will I be repaying while the student's at school, but keep in mind if it's deferred, it's accruing interest in general, and then that number does grow by the time you're finished with school.
So if a student has a scholarship, does that typically go through the financial aid office, or how does that work?
Yep, so it's great. A lot of times we start to see them flow in right now, and it's fantastic. It helps with the bill, and we want to get it on there anticipating. So what I suggest is send us the award offer notice, the congratulations piece, because that lets us know what's on its way. We'll put it on as anticipated. We actually won't disperse it onto the student's account, but it still counts towards your fall bill. So if you see one that says, for $500, she has, say, your daughter has, say, $1,000 offer, and it says it's going to come in $500 for fall, $500 for spring. With that said, that means that we're going to be thinking that that's split evenly. If that money doesn't come in the fall, it drops off, and then we would follow up with the student, and usually the students come in to talk to us about what was needed. Some scholarships will say in that award offer that they need a GPA finalized at the end of the fall semester. That would hold it up, and we would actually make that a spring scholarship. Okay, so sometimes it can vary how they're put on your award offer. Always look at the award offers that are revised and sent out in InfoBear. Your students should be able to share that with you if you have any questions. But for right now, if you have a scholarship, and even if you have the check, you can send it to the financial aid office, and we'll make sure that that gets applied correctly to your account.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna be conscious of time. We do have about 12 more minutes left of the Q&A session, so please feel free to jump in and ask Laura any specific based questions that are not personalized, obviously. We wanna protect the rights of your student, or you can obviously drop them in the chat function. Again, I'm gonna have Michelle drop the financial aid email and their number, so if you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to them as well. So I have a question, what's the difference between a student in undergrad and they go to their graduate school? Is it about the same with financial aid?
Well, it depends on your economic situation, but in general, you're paying for grad school out of your own. The student's paying full-heartedly with loans. Very few fellowships / full scholarships to grad school are out there. So if you're a parent that you see you have very little financial aid now, and you thinking, well, maybe grad school, something could change. It's a chance, but you'd probably be carrying most of the load for that as well. So grad school, a student becomes independent, and basically at that point in time, they are using Stafford loans at a much larger capacity, and then depending on where they go, they might be asked to still provide parent information, depending on if they're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, different things like that. The student does become an independent as soon as they are in graduate school. There is no grants per se, like Pell Grant and stuff does not exist for graduate school either. That is considered, undergrad only, and only for your first undergrad. So keep that in mind as you're planning with the student. Usually we like to say try to make your undergrad as affordable as possible, because graduates in graduate school, about 85% is going to definitely be an out-of-pocket expense in the sense of loans, student loans. So just something to keep in mind as your student progresses.
So with that, it says, would their undergraduate student loans payments be halted until they're done with their graduate school?
So it depends. So the Stafford loans, yes. The private loans in general, yes. The Parent Plus loans, no. So if you decide to take on the Plus loan parent responsibility, you can know that you're going to be in repayment 6 months after the student finishes their undergrad, and they do not care if the student is in graduate school for deferment. So you will be in repayment.
Thank you. We have a question that says, if we don't apply for loans until after the bill comes out, what is the turnaround time to be sure that loans are in prior to starting?
So prior to starting, meaning, can you repeat the question just one more time for me?
Sure. If we don't apply for loans until after the bill comes out, what is the turnaround time to be sure that loans are in prior to start?
So if you do the federal, it'll be quick. So the plus loan takes less than 8 hours to show up. The privates, you're kind of at the whim of the bank, meaning that everything's usually completed online. But then the problem will be that they'll ask for like a driver's license copy, and then you have to send that in. So we usually say it takes about a week to 2 weeks to find out about your plus loan. So you could get a pre-approval. That's fine. What you would have the issue in is probably the fact that you're in a little bit of a limbo of waiting for us to do what we call school certification. Now, keep in mind, you might be looking at some schools that say your bill has to be completely accounted for before you attend the school, meaning we won't let you move in unless we see the private loan covers for the year along with everything you need to do for financial aid. Here at BSU, it's a bit different. We work with you throughout the year. So one of the things to keep in mind is please don't panic if we're approaching September 2nd and perhaps you still don't have everything in order. We understand. And we are not going to tell you that you cannot proceed to becoming a student here, okay? What we will do is say that if you don't have it done by, say, pre-reg time in November, you're not going to probably be able to pre-reg because there'll be a positive balance on there. There'll be what they call a balance hold. But in general, we operate a little differently than the private. So please don't get concerned and really worried about that. We're here to help you throughout this year. And even if you have things change mid-year, it happens for many people. That's what our office is here for. We're here to help you figure out, navigate it. You're not on your own. Biggest thing I can say is if you're having trouble, you have to reach out because we don't know if you are. So you definitely have to let us know, and then we'll be able to, help you along the way.
Awesome. My question, I'm going to end this right. My personal question to you, Laura, is what is your best piece of advice to parents and their new students coming to the fall related to financial aid and any of the payment plan options?
So here at BSU, I've been doing this for 15 years, so this is what I can assure you. Here at BSU, we do not panic, okay, in the financial aid office, meaning that if you're concerned, we understand, and we're here for you. Please take into account that this can sometimes take 24 hours to 48 hours for us to get back to you, but we hear you, we know you're there, and we will definitely respond to you. Now, if you're having trouble and difficulty getting through to us, you can always reach out to admissions and say, I'm having, trouble, or I don't know if they didn't get my message, those types of things. We hear from many, many different people, and we're happy to help assist. One of the biggest things is as you take on this endeavor, remember that it's not just 1 year. If this is a really, really hard financial situation right now that you're in, come talk to us now, and we will let you know if we think that this is a good decision, okay? We'll be very honest with you because we look at the finances to how to get you through to the end. And we can't get you through to the end if we can't really see the resources to do it. So we're not just going to say, come for 1 year and we'll figure it out later. No, we really want to have the conversation of how does this look for your family holistically? How can we make sure that we're here to support you? And is 2 years of community college a better choice for you and your family right now and then transfer in? Or is it that we feel that you can be successful here, this is what it's going to cost, and this is what you can plan for? And I will say that Bridgewater State University does a great job of being able to see that long picture because we're not trying to just have you here for 1 year, okay? We want you invested. We want the student to not be facing financial burdens as much as possible when they're here. We want them concentrating on their studies and having a great experience in college that then leads to them getting employment after college. Because in the end, we don't want anyone defaulting on loans. We don't want people coming out financially burdened to a point where they cannot proceed in their life and through their career. So there is quite a bit of time in caring and counseling here in my office. And so I can assure you that if you have concerns right now, reach out to us. Please be patient as we're working through this troubled time, which everyone's aware of. And don't be scared to ask for help. That's what we're here for. And even if you think you don't qualify, ask. That's what my motto has been through my whole life. That's the philosophy of the office. And if you don't ask, then we don't know. And so then we can't assist you with your questions.
Thank you so much, Laura. Again, to be conscious of time, we're going to have Laura sign off just because it is almost 1 o'clock. So thank you to everyone that has attended this session. It was really informative. Laura, thank you so much for all your guidance and all your input. It was really helpful. If any of you do have any other questions, please reach out to the financial aid office. Michelle will drop the name again in the chat because it did disappear. But Michelle and I will stay on for the next 5 minutes. Laura, thank you so much. And just so everyone knows, we do have Q&A sessions going on throughout the summer. Next week, we have a Q&A session regarding campus police and safety. So please feel free to attend that if you would like. But again, if you have any questions, reach out and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the recorded session